In the pristine offices of Pinnacle Enterprises, a quiet cleaning lady named Evelyn moved unnoticed through the halls, her presence barely a whisper in the rush of corporate power. But behind her humble uniform hid a secret that would shake the entire company to its core. One unsuspecting morning, the very executives who had dismissed her would learn that she wasn't just cleaning their floors. She owned them. Evelyn Johnson moved quietly through the hallways of Pinnacle Enterprises, her well-worn cleaning cart creaking slightly as she went. The pristine glass walls, sleek furniture, and bustling employees all passed by in a blur, and no one gave her a second glance. To them, she was invisible, a fixture, a part of the building, just there to clean up their messes. Years of hard work had left her with calloused hands and aching joints, but Evelyn barely noticed the physical strain. She had grown used to the daily routines, where executives and employees dressed in designer suits and polished shoes barely acknowledged her presence. She observed their hurried steps, their dismissive gestures, their laughter at their own jokes, and, most notably, their lack of respect for the people who served them. But Evelyn's sharp eyes missed nothing. She noticed how some smiled with kindness while others barely glanced her way, each detail captured and stored away, though none knew the weight of her observations. One of the few who noticed her, though, was a young woman named Jessica Reyes. Jessica was a recent hire, fresh out of business school and new to the corporate world. She was bright-eyed, full of ambition, and eager to make a name for herself at Pinnacle. But even in her short time there, Jessica had begun to sense something unsettling about the company's atmosphere. There was an unspoken hierarchy, a toxic undercurrent of superiority that permeated every corner of the office. One day, as Jessica waited for an elevator, she watched as Evelyn pushed her cleaning cart past a group of executives who barely moved to make way for her. One of them even muttered under his breath, "They should really keep her out of the way during work hours." Evelyn acted as if she hadn't heard, her head bowed as she continued her work, but Jessica felt a surge of discomfort. Why was Evelyn treated like she didn't belong? Jessica wondered. Evelyn had a quiet dignity about her, a calm confidence that didn't fit the image of an unnoticed worker. Every now and then, Jessica caught glimpses of Evelyn's observant gaze as she moved through the office, almost as if she were watching everything unfold with a deeper understanding. It was a look Jessica couldn't quite place, one that hinted at a hidden strength. Despite the discomfort she felt, Jessica kept her thoughts to herself, uncertain of her place in this high-stakes corporate world. She was just starting her career, and Pinnacle was her ticket to success, or so she hoped. Still, a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that the way Evelyn was treated said something fundamental about Pinnacle Enterprises. Every morning, Evelyn arrived before sunrise and left long after most of the employees had gone home. Her dedication was unparalleled. Yet the people she cleaned up after never took the time to say a simple thank you. They laughed loudly, made big deals in conference rooms, and passed her by without so much as a nod of recognition. But Evelyn remained quiet, resilient, a silent observer of the company's daily dramas and the hierarchy that defined its every action. Unbeknownst to Jessica or anyone else, Evelyn's patience was wearing thin. She had worked tirelessly, sacrificing much over the years, but now her patience was not the passive kind. There was purpose in her silence. Evelyn was waiting, watching for the right moment when she could finally make her mark and change everything about this place that had overlooked her for so long. Tuesday morning at Pinnacle Enterprises began like any other, with a brisk, almost palpable tension in the air as executives shuffled into their offices. Evelyn went about her usual routine, carefully wiping down glass surfaces, emptying trash bins, and ensuring every corner of the office was spotless. Her presence was, as always, overlooked and unappreciated. Greg Matthews, one of the company's top executives, sauntered into the boardroom with his usual air of self-importance. Greg was known for his sharp wit and his sharper tongue, often used at the expense of others. Today was no exception. As Evelyn quietly polished the large windows lining the boardroom, Greg threw her a sidelong glance, his lips curling into a smug grin. "Hey, make sure you don't leave streaks this time, okay?" Greg said, his tone mocking as he barely looked her way. Some of us have important meetings here. Wouldn't want our guests to see a sloppy job." A few of his colleagues who were already seated chuckled, joining in the casual humiliation. Evelyn felt the sting of Greg's words, but her expression remained neutral. She simply nodded, continuing to polish the glass in silence, her gaze fixed on her work. Years of enduring dismissive comments like these had taught her to keep her emotions in check. She'd grown accustomed to being ridiculed, but today, something shifted within her. She knew that Greg's arrogant words would not go unanswered for long. As the day went on, Evelyn continued her work, passing by groups of employees who scarcely noticed her. They gossiped openly about office rumors, strategized over upcoming projects, and made jokes at the expense of people who weren't present. Evelyn heard everything but said nothing. She was invisible, a presence without a voice, and the employees continued with their routine as if she didn't exist. Yet among all these people, Jessica Reyes couldn't shake the discomfort she felt after witnessing Greg's treatment of Evelyn. She replayed the moment in her mind, the way Greg had looked at Evelyn as if she were no more than a nuisance. Jessica didn't like it, but she didn't know what she could do about it. She was new, untested, and still trying to find her place. The company's hierarchy was clear, and she didn't want to jeopardize her standing by speaking up for someone who, in the eyes of others, didn't matter. As the afternoon wore on, Jessica's unease grew. She had come to Pinnacle Enterprises with big dreams, eager to prove herself and make an impact. But what she had seen over the past few weeks troubled her. The company that looked so polished and respected from the outside seemed to be hiding a darker side, one where power was wielded carelessly and respect was an afterthought. That afternoon, Greg and his colleagues returned to the boardroom for a final meeting before the arrival of the CEO, James Willard, who was scheduled to conduct the highly anticipated annual review. Greg strutted into the room, his earlier smugness still evident. He noticed Evelyn quietly cleaning up in a corner and threw her another dismissive glance, shaking his head as if her mere presence was offensive. "Honestly, can't we find a better way to keep the place clean?" he muttered to a nearby colleague, not bothering to keep his voice low. "This is supposed to be a professional environment." Evelyn said nothing, her face a mask of calm as she finished her tasks. But inside, she felt a spark. She knew the time was coming when Greg and his peers would finally see her, not as the cleaning lady, but as something far more formidable. And that time was closer than anyone in that boardroom could have imagined. As the day wore on, Evelyn moved through the office with her usual measured calm, but beneath her composed exterior, she was alert and focused. She had observed Pinnacle Enterprises for years, seen its inner workings from a perspective no one else had. As the cleaning lady, Evelyn had an unrestricted view into the company's culture and its people, their motivations, their insecurities, and, most importantly, their flaws. From behind her seemingly humble post, she saw everything that the executives overlooked. The employees saw her as just another invisible worker, someone who existed only to clean up their messes and be out of the way. And that was how she had managed to remain unseen, all the while collecting details, watching, learning. It was clear to her that Pinnacle's toxic environment stemmed from the very top, an arrogance that trickled down through every layer of the company. Respect was given sparingly, and kindness was treated as a weakness. Evelyn had seen people come and go, many burned out by the relentless demands and thankless culture that Pinnacle had created. She watched ambitious newcomers like Jessica, who arrived at the company bright-eyed and hopeful, only to find themselves swept up in a cold corporate machine. Jessica was different, though. She noticed Evelyn, and in her quiet way, respected her, something Evelyn didn't take lightly. It gave Evelyn hope, a glimmer that perhaps all was not lost in the next generation of leaders. Jessica, meanwhile, grew increasingly aware of Evelyn's quiet authority. She was the only one who noticed how Evelyn moved with a subtle but unmistakable confidence, as if she understood more than her role suggested. Evelyn didn't just clean. She observed, almost as if she were studying the company from within. Jessica couldn't quite shake the feeling that Evelyn knew something no one else did. Evelyn continued her routine with practiced ease, but today felt different. Today, she knew, was the beginning of a long-awaited change. Her patience had been tested over the years, but now she was ready to act. She had worked her way to the top not through traditional means, but by positioning herself quietly, buying shares when no one was paying attention, amassing control piece by piece. And as she scrubbed the boardroom floors that afternoon, she knew that Pinnacle Enterprises was as much hers as anyone else's. Hours later, as employees filed into the boardroom for the meeting with CEO James Willard, Evelyn stood in the corner, her cleaning supplies in hand, blending into the background as always. But there was a fire in her eyes, a quiet intensity that went unnoticed by everyone except Jessica, who stood near the back, watching her with curiosity and respect. The tension in the room grew as James Willard entered. The CEO was a tall, imposing man with a reputation for ruthless efficiency. His arrival signaled an air of expectation, and the employees straightened in their seats, waiting for the meeting to begin. As James moved to the head of the table, his gaze swept over the room, finally resting on Evelyn, who stood quietly by the door. He paused, a faint smile appearing on his face, a look that no one else could quite interpret. Then, breaking the silence, he spoke words that no one expected. "Evelyn," he said warmly, his voice filling the room. "I think it's time, don't you?" For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The employees exchanged confused glances, wondering what the CEO meant. Greg, who had mocked Evelyn earlier, sat frozen, his self-assured expression slipping away, replaced by a look of bewilderment. Evelyn put down her cleaning supplies, straightened her back, and walked to the front of the room, her movements slow and deliberate. The once invisible cleaning lady now stood in front of the entire board, her presence commanding in a way that left everyone stunned. The room was silent, save for the soft rustling of papers and the uneasy shifting in chairs. Evelyn stood at the front of the boardroom, facing the row of executives and employees, her gaze calm and steady. For the first time, everyone truly looked at her, not as the cleaning lady, but as someone who held their attention and their future in her hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," James Willard began, his voice filled with a weight that silenced even the faintest murmur. "Allow me to formally introduce you to Evelyn Johnson, the majority shareholder of Pinnacle Enterprises." A ripple of shock passed through the room. The board members sat with widened eyes and mouths agape, their disbelief etched across their faces. Jessica's heart pounded as she realized the enormity of what was unfolding. The woman everyone had disregarded, belittled, and ignored was, in reality, the company's largest shareholder. Greg Matthews, the once confident executive who had mocked Evelyn earlier, sat motionless. His face paled as he struggled to grasp the truth. The smug arrogance he had worn like a second skin vanished, replaced by a look of utter shock. Evelyn, now standing tall, looked around the room, meeting the gaze of each person who had ever dismissed her. She was no longer the quiet observer. She was the powerful force behind the scenes, the one who had watched Pinnacle's every move from within. She took a breath, and her voice was steady as she addressed the room. "For years," Evelyn began, her words cutting through the silence, "I have seen how this company operates, not from behind a desk, but from the floors you walk on, the hallways you rush through, the offices you leave in disarray. I have seen the way you treat people like me, people who you consider beneath you, as if we are invisible, unworthy of even a basic greeting. But I assure you, I have seen every single one of you." The stunned employees sat riveted, unable to look away from her. The quiet cleaning lady they had overlooked was now their leader, and her words carried a power they had never before felt in that room. Evelyn's eyes settled on Greg, who still sat rigid in his chair, his fingers gripping the armrests. "Mr. Matthews," she said, her tone cold but calm, "you, in particular, have shown me what entitlement looks like. You speak of importance, but fail to see the people who keep this place running." Greg swallowed hard, but he could not find the words to respond. Evelyn continued, her voice gaining strength. "This company is built on the efforts of every single person who works here, from the executives to the janitors. And yet, I have watched as many of you treat those below you with disrespect, arrogance, and disregard. That ends today." A heavy silence fell over the room as Evelyn's words sank in. Jessica, standing near the back, felt a surge of admiration for this woman who had so unexpectedly revealed herself. Evelyn was more than just a leader. She was a reminder of the power of resilience and self-worth, a force no one had seen coming. James Willard, who had been observing quietly, nodded approvingly, his expression unreadable but supportive. It was now clear that this reveal had been carefully orchestrated, a plan that James and Evelyn had crafted over time to bring about a long-overdue change in Pinnacle's culture. Evelyn looked out over the room, her gaze unyielding. "From this day forward, things will be different," she declared. "We will no longer tolerate the arrogance, the disrespect, the entitlement that has plagued this company for too long. Pinnacle Enterprises will be a place that values every employee, that builds its success on mutual respect and decency." Her eyes returned to Greg, who looked like he wanted to disappear. "And as for you, Mr. Matthews," Evelyn said, her voice unwavering, "you will be the first to go." Gasps filled the room, and murmurs rippled through the crowd as Greg's face drained of color. He stammered, "But, Miss Johnson, I didn't know. I had no idea." "No," Evelyn replied, her tone icy. "That's exactly the problem. You didn't care to know. You saw me, but you didn't see me. You never asked who I was or why I was here. All you saw was a uniform, and for that you have shown me that you don't belong here." With those words, Evelyn had set in motion the transformation she had been planning for years. The room sat in stunned silence, every executive forced to reckon with the reality that their unchecked arrogance would no longer go unpunished. Evelyn, the invisible presence they had mocked, now held their fates in her hands. The atmosphere in the boardroom was tense and thick with disbelief. Executives who had spent years building walls of superiority around themselves were now stripped of their confidence, as Evelyn's gaze held them accountable. Greg Matthews sat in silence, his mind racing as he tried to process what had just happened. He had risen through the ranks by stepping over others, confident that his arrogance and connections would shield him from any consequences. But now, his career had been cut down in a single moment by the woman he had scorned. Evelyn's expression was unyielding as she looked directly at Greg, her gaze cool and unforgiving. "You're fired, Greg," she stated firmly. "Effective immediately." Greg's hands trembled as he gripped the edges of his chair. The once powerful executive, who had belittled so many in his pursuit of power, found himself powerless. His eyes darted to James Willard, hoping for some reprieve, but the CEO merely watched him with a steady gaze, showing no intention of intervening. James's silence signaled his full support of Evelyn's decision, and it was clear that Greg's appeal would be in vain. The other board members exchanged anxious glances, shifting in their seats, some whispering in hushed tones. It was as if they were seeing Evelyn for the first time, not as the cleaner but as the woman who had the power to shape the future of Pinnacle Enterprises. They realized that their usual tactics, appeasement, deflection, charm, would not sway her. Evelyn turned her attention back to the board, her gaze scanning the room as she took in each face. Her calm voice, though quiet, cut through the silence like a blade. "This is a wake-up call for all of you," she declared. "For years, I have watched you build this company on a foundation of arrogance, ignoring the very people who make your success possible. That will change starting today." Her words hung in the air, a stern warning and a promise. Jessica, standing in the back of the room, felt a surge of respect and admiration for Evelyn. She had never seen such strength, such fearlessness, in a leader. Evelyn wasn't just delivering a speech. She was setting the foundation for a new Pinnacle Enterprises, one that Jessica wanted to be a part of. Evelyn's gaze landed on each executive, giving them a moment to absorb the weight of her words. She continued, her tone firm but fair. "From this moment on, Pinnacle will be a place where everyone's contributions are respected. We will no longer tolerate behavior that undermines or belittles others. If you cannot adapt to this new culture, you are free to leave." The executives sat frozen, each grappling with the realization that Evelyn was serious. Her words were not a threat. They were a statement of intent. Pinnacle's culture, long rooted in entitlement, would be transformed under her leadership. Jessica's heart swelled with hope. She had joined the company with dreams of making a difference, but had quickly been disillusioned by its toxic environment. Now, for the first time, she saw the possibility of real change. Evelyn's actions were not just about justice. They were about rebuilding a place where people could work with dignity and respect. At that moment, Greg rose from his seat, his face pale and eyes downcast. He stumbled out of the boardroom, his departure a stark reminder of the consequences that now awaited those who failed to respect the new values Evelyn had set. His exit left the room in a heavy silence, each executive now reflecting on their own actions. Evelyn turned to James Willard, who gave her an approving nod. It was clear to everyone present that this moment had been meticulously planned, that James and Evelyn had been allies all along, quietly preparing for this day. Evelyn's eyes softened as she looked at James. "Thank you, James," she said, her voice carrying a note of genuine gratitude, "for believing in me when no one else did." James's face broke into a rare smile, his respect for Evelyn clear. "It's not hard to believe in someone as strong and determined as you," he replied. "This company needed a leader like you, someone who understands what it means to work for something, to earn it." Evelyn returned her gaze to the room, her stance one of authority but also of care. "This is your opportunity," she said firmly, addressing the remaining board members. "You can stay and be part of something better, or you can leave. But either way, things will be different from now on." With that, Evelyn turned and walked out of the boardroom, leaving behind a room full of stunned faces. She had shattered the old order, setting a new path for Pinnacle Enterprises, one that was built on respect and integrity. The power dynamics had shifted in an instant, and everyone knew it. Jessica watched Evelyn's retreating figure, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. She had witnessed something monumental, a turning point that would not only change the company but her own life as well. As Evelyn exited the boardroom, the silence she left behind was filled with a sense of awe and apprehension. The executives remained seated, their minds reeling, each one processing what had just happened. Some were too shocked to move. Others were exchanging uneasy glances, wondering what this new era at Pinnacle Enterprises would mean for them. Jessica, who had stood quietly in the back, felt her heart race as she followed Evelyn out of the boardroom. She caught up with her in the hallway, her mind buzzing with admiration and curiosity. In just a few hours, the woman she'd once seen as the quiet cleaning lady had become her greatest inspiration. "Miss Johnson," Jessica said, her voice laced with respect, "I just wanted to say thank you for everything." Evelyn turned to face her, a warm but weary smile on her face. "You don't need to thank me, Jessica," she replied, "but I do appreciate your kindness, something that's rare in places like this." Jessica felt a sense of pride at Evelyn's words. I've seen what this place can do to people. I came here with hopes and dreams, but it's been hard to keep those alive in an environment that can be so harsh." Evelyn nodded, her eyes softening as she listened. "I understand more than you know. I was once like you, full of ambition and hope. But I learned that real strength isn't about climbing to the top quickly. It's about knowing your worth and standing up for it, even when others try to tear you down." Jessica felt Evelyn's words sink deep into her, inspiring a renewed determination to make a difference. "Do you think things will really change here?" she asked, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. Evelyn placed a reassuring hand on Jessica's shoulder. "Change isn't easy, Jessica. It takes time and persistence, but it's possible. I'm setting the foundation, but people like you will be the ones to carry it forward. Don't let this place dim your light. Keep your sense of purpose close, and remember that you have the power to shape the kind of environment you want to work in." Jessica nodded, feeling the weight of Evelyn's words and the responsibility they carried. She knew that she wanted to be part of this new chapter at Pinnacle, to help rebuild it into a place where people could feel valued and respected. As they walked down the hallway together, Employees who had once ignored Evelyn now looked at her with newfound respect, some even offering her timid smiles. Word of the boardroom revelation had spread quickly, and the company's employees sensed that something fundamental had shifted. Evelyn, however, remained grounded, her demeanor unchanged. She hadn't sought out admiration. She had only done what she believed was necessary to restore integrity to a place that had lost its way. Later that afternoon, Evelyn and James met in his office, where they reviewed the initial plans for the new company structure. They discussed implementing a more inclusive culture, introducing mentorship programs, and creating an open-door policy where employees, no matter their rank, could voice their ideas and concerns. "I've always believed that every person here has value," Evelyn said as she reviewed the proposals. "We just need to make sure they know that, too. A company can't thrive when it forgets the people who build it from the ground up." James agreed, nodding thoughtfully. "This is the beginning of something new, Evelyn. I'm grateful to have you leading this alongside me. Together, we'll make Pinnacle a place that people can be proud to work for." As they wrapped up their meeting, James offered Evelyn a genuine smile. "You know, Evelyn, people like you don't come along very often. You've reminded me why I wanted to lead this company in the first place." Evelyn smiled, a rare softness in her expression. "Thank you, James. And remember, it was your belief in me that allowed all of this to happen. We're in this together." With a shared vision and a renewed sense of purpose, Evelyn and James were ready to transform Pinnacle Enterprises into a company built on values, not just profits. They knew the journey would be challenging, and that they would face resistance from those unwilling to adapt. But they were determined to lead by example. As Evelyn left James's office, she felt lighter, more resolved. She knew her years of quiet patience had been worth it. Pinnacle was changing, and while it might not be easy, it was a change she had fought for, a change she would see through. Jessica watched Evelyn from a distance, knowing that she had just witnessed something extraordinary. For the first time in her career, she felt she was part of something meaningful, a movement that would redefine not only the company but her own future. With each step Evelyn took, she left behind a legacy of resilience, integrity, and strength. She had been invisible once, but now she was the force leading Pinnacle Enterprises toward a brighter, more inclusive future. In the following weeks, Pinnacle Enterprises underwent a transformation unlike anything it had ever seen. Evelyn's presence, once quiet and invisible, became the heartbeat of a revolution. Her influence touched every part of the company, from the boardroom to the break rooms, and employees who had once felt unseen now had a voice. Jessica was eager to contribute to the changes Evelyn and James had envisioned. She volunteered to be part of a task force dedicated to improving company culture, feeling inspired by Evelyn's example. Meetings with Evelyn were both humbling and motivating. Evelyn's wisdom, earned through years of resilience, guided every discussion. In one of these meetings, Evelyn introduced a new set of values to the team: respect, integrity, and empathy. She wanted these values to become more than words on a wall. They were principles by which every employee at Pinnacle would live. "These values are not just guidelines," Evelyn explained to the team, her voice steady and full of conviction. "They're the foundation upon which we'll rebuild Pinnacle. We are redefining what it means to be successful here, not just in terms of profits, but in how we treat one another, how we support each other, and how we grow together." Jessica couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. She remembered the discomfort she'd felt when she first noticed how people treated Evelyn. Now, she was part of a team creating real change, led by the very woman she had once worried for. One of the most powerful shifts Evelyn implemented was an open-door policy. Any employee, regardless of rank, could share their ideas, concerns, and feedback directly with her. Evelyn began hosting weekly town hall meetings, where employees were encouraged to voice their thoughts on the company's direction and culture. She listened to each of them attentively, her empathy and understanding clear in every response. At these meetings, Evelyn often shared stories from her own experiences working at Pinnacle, moments when she had felt overlooked or dismissed. The employees, many of whom had faced similar struggles, resonated deeply with her words. They saw themselves in her story, and for the first time, they felt empowered to share their own. Meanwhile, Jessica took on a mentoring role for newer employees, a responsibility she had learned from Evelyn's example. She wanted to foster an environment where people were valued, where respect and kindness were expected, not optional. She knew this was Evelyn's dream, and she wanted to make it a reality. Some executives were slow to adapt to the new culture, but Evelyn's approach was patient yet firm. She knew that true transformation wouldn't happen overnight, but she also knew that persistence would pay off. Those who resisted the changes were given a choice: either embrace the new values of Pinnacle or find a company that aligned with their own views. Slowly, the resistant ones either adapted or left, and Pinnacle began to attract employees who shared Evelyn's vision. Evelyn also implemented programs to recognize and celebrate the achievements of every employee, from the ground up. Appreciation became a cornerstone of Pinnacle's culture, and employees were finally seen and valued for their unique contributions. This recognition wasn't about grand gestures, but small, meaningful acknowledgments. A thank you note, a public acknowledgement in meetings, a quiet expression of gratitude. One day, Jessica, now fully committed to Evelyn's mission, approached her mentor with a question. "Evelyn," she asked thoughtfully, "what keeps you going? I've seen you face resistance, but you always stay so strong." Evelyn looked at her with a gentle smile. "Jessica, I remember a time when I felt invisible. I know how it feels to be overlooked, to be treated as if you don't matter. But I also know the power of resilience. I've learned that if you stand by your values and stay true to your purpose, you can create change, even if it takes time. That's what keeps me going, the hope that one day, no one in this company will feel the way I once did." Jessica nodded, inspired yet again. She understood now that Evelyn's strength came not from authority, but from a deep commitment to the people around her, a dedication to making Pinnacle a place where everyone mattered. With each passing day, Evelyn's legacy grew. Employees began to carry themselves with pride, embracing the values she had set forth. Jessica watched in awe as her colleagues, some of whom had once scoffed at the idea of change, now treated one another with newfound respect and kindness. Evelyn's transformation of Pinnacle Enterprises became the talk of the industry. Other companies reached out, curious about the cultural shift taking place within Pinnacle's walls. Evelyn never sought the spotlight, but her work spoke volumes, inspiring a broader conversation about what a healthy, inclusive work environment could look like. One evening, as she prepared to leave the office, Jessica stopped by Evelyn's office. She found Evelyn gazing out the window, looking out at the city lights. "Miss Johnson," Jessica began, breaking the silence, "I just wanted to say thank you, not just for the changes here, but for showing me and all of us what it means to lead with integrity." Evelyn turned, her face softened by a warm smile. "Jessica, you don't need to thank me. I may have started this journey, but you and others like you are the ones who will carry it forward. Never forget that real leadership is about lifting others up, not standing above them." Jessica nodded, her heart full. She understood now that Evelyn's legacy would live on through each person she had inspired. As Evelyn turned to leave the office that night, she took one last look at the building she had once walked through in silence, unseen and unnoticed. Now it was a place where her voice, and the voices of so many others, could finally be heard. Pinnacle Enterprises would forever remember Evelyn Johnson, not just as a leader, but as the woman who taught them the true meaning of respect, resilience, and transformation. The city lights glowed as Evelyn walked out, a quiet satisfaction in her heart. She had started from the ground up, built herself piece by piece, and now stood as the architect of a new era. And though her story at Pinnacle had begun in silence, it ended in a legacy that would echo for years to come. Months passed, and the changes at Pinnacle Enterprises continued to deepen. Evelyn's influence permeated the culture, with even the smallest departments embracing her vision. The company felt alive with new energy. Employees now collaborated with enthusiasm, feeling valued and motivated by the inclusive culture Evelyn had fostered. People felt safe voicing their ideas, knowing their contributions mattered. Jessica, now a rising leader within Pinnacle, took Evelyn's teachings to heart, working tirelessly to maintain the company's new direction. She introduced programs to promote growth and support, organizing mentorship opportunities and wellness initiatives. Each of these steps, Jessica knew, was another way of honoring Evelyn's legacy, which had become the cornerstone of Pinnacle's identity. Evelyn herself became somewhat of a legend within the company, even beyond her role as the majority shareholder. Stories circulated about the day she had transformed the boardroom, the day the invisible cleaning lady had claimed her power and reminded everyone of the importance of dignity and respect. She was admired not only for her position but for her quiet resilience and the unwavering integrity that had brought about real change. One evening, as Jessica was finishing up a late meeting, she received a message from Evelyn asking her to meet on the rooftop of the building. Surprised, Jessica made her way up, her footsteps echoing as she walked across the silent rooftop toward where Evelyn stood, looking out over the city. The two women stood together, gazing at the skyline that stretched endlessly before them, each building glowing under the night sky. Evelyn's eyes held a look of quiet pride and nostalgia as she spoke. "Jessica," she began, "it's been an honor to watch you grow. You've shown a strength and dedication that remind me why I started this journey in the first place. Pinnacle is in good hands with people like you leading it." Jessica smiled, deeply moved by Evelyn's words. "Thank you, Evelyn. Everything I've done has been inspired by you. You showed me what real leadership looks like, what it means to value people over power." Evelyn turned to face Jessica, her expression soft but serious. "That's exactly why I wanted to meet with you tonight. I have something important to tell you." Jessica's heart quickened, sensing that Evelyn was about to share something significant. "I've decided it's time for me to step back," Evelyn said, her voice calm. "I've put my heart and soul into this company, and now it's time for the next generation to carry it forward. Pinnacle needs fresh perspectives, new ideas, and I have every confidence that people like you will continue the work we've started here." Jessica felt a pang of surprise and sadness, realizing how deeply Evelyn's presence had impacted her. But she knew, too, that Evelyn had earned this next chapter of her life, a chapter where she could rest, free from the weight of corporate responsibility. "You've given us everything, Evelyn," Jessica replied, her voice filled with gratitude. "I promise we'll honor your legacy. We'll continue building Pinnacle into a company that reflects your vision, a place where people come first." Evelyn's eyes glistened as she reached out, placing a hand on Jessica's shoulder. "I know you will. Remember, Jessica, never let the desire for success overshadow the value of empathy. Lead with kindness and others will follow." The two women shared a quiet moment on the rooftop, the city lights reflecting the possibilities that lay ahead. Evelyn felt a sense of peace, knowing that the company she had nurtured would continue to thrive in the hands of people she trusted. A few weeks later, Evelyn's retirement was announced company-wide. She was honored in a farewell ceremony, surrounded by the many employees whose lives she had touched. They spoke of how she had inspired them, how her compassion and strength had transformed the company into a place of growth and respect. Tears were shed, laughs were shared, and a profound gratitude hung in the air, uniting everyone who had been touched by Evelyn's journey. As she left Pinnacle Enterprises for the last time, Evelyn walked through the familiar halls with a quiet satisfaction, saying goodbye to the building that had once felt like a fortress of unbreakable hierarchy. Now, thanks to her, it had become a place of opportunity and dignity, a place where every voice mattered. In her absence, the legacy of Evelyn Johnson endured. Jessica and others who had been inspired by her continued her work, upholding the principles Evelyn had set forth. Pinnacle became known not only for its success but for its heart, a company that balanced achievement with humanity, driven by a culture of respect and collaboration. Years later, Jessica would often recall the story of Evelyn, the woman who rose from invisibility to become the backbone of an empire. Her story became a part of Pinnacle's identity, passed down to each new hire as a reminder of what was possible with resilience, integrity, and the courage to challenge the status quo. Evelyn Johnson had left Pinnacle Enterprises, but her spirit remained, woven into the fabric of the company, and the lives she had forever changed.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can keep bringing you the best stories.